storyteller, one of the most powerful ways you can draw readers into your story and keep them there is by showing how your characters feel and helping readers experience those emotions with the character. But how can you convey emotions in a unique, compelling way? Do you struggle with repeating the same gestures, descriptions, and actions over and over, or using cliched expressions? In this week's writer coaching session, I'll share and review a resource that promises to help you brainstorm new ways to ramp up your character emotions and avoid the major pitfalls. The Emotion Thesaurus by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing those last names. We'll discuss what's included in the book, how to use it, and my honest opinion as an author, editor, and your story coach. Welcome, I'm Bridget from B Squared Writer Coaching. I'm here to help you make your story powerful, polished, and publishable so you can move readers and help them experience your character's journey with maximum emotional impact. Before we get into the review for today, I have a gift for you just for visiting my channel. My free workshop, 6 Essential Elements of a Powerful Story. Character emotion is just one of the elements that makes a story a page-turner. My 25-minute video workshop touches on that, but is packed with more ways to ramp up your plot, conflicts, setting, theme, and yes, those characters, plus how to write all this in a way that makes readers feel like they're living the adventure with the characters. Just click the link in the description or visit b2writercoaching.com/workshop. That's the letter B, the number 2, writercoaching.com/workshop to watch it today. But you may want to wait until you finish this video first. And be sure to stick around till the end so you won't miss this week's Power Up, a super practical action step you can take right now in the story you're working on. Just a note before we get started, this version that I'm holding up is the first edition of the Emotion Thesaurus. I have the second edition on Kindle, and here's the cover for that. I'll be showing you a portion of the second edition in a moment through the sample that you can see on Amazon, so we won't be violating any copyright issues in doing that. But just to let you know, the second edition contains everything in the first edition, plus it expands the emotion entries from 75, I think it was, to 130. And it also contains additional helpful articles and entry information for each emotion. If you do consider getting the Emotion Thesaurus, that's just one thing to keep in mind when choosing which edition you want. So what is inside the Emotion Thesaurus? Let's take a look. Besides the emotion entries, both versions contain several helpful articles at the beginning of the book. The ones we can find in both editions of the book, in some form or other, include an article called The Power of Emotion. In the first edition, I believe that is one of the sections of the introduction. In the second edition, we have the introduction to the second edition and then a separate article on the power of emotion. This just talks about how emotion affects the reader. Then we have a section on using the Emotion Thesaurus and one on common problems with showing emotion. It may be called something different in each version, but it's definitely in both. In addition to that, the latest version includes the following articles as well. Character research, what to know to write authentic emotion, using dialogue to write emotion, subtext, what lies beneath, and additional ideas for brainstorming fresh emotions. This last one will come in super handy because one of the big complaints, which I'll get to later, about the Emotion Thesaurus is how some of the items in the emotion entries seem to be repetitive, and we'll discuss that further near the end of the video. The table of contents shows the variety and depth of the emotions to be covered, almost 4 pages just to list the entries. The introductory articles alone are a useful resource. In their guidance on the common problems associated with conveying emotion, the authors advise us to use this guide to avoid telling instead of showing, cliched emotions, melodrama, over-reliance on dialogue or thought. Not that you shouldn't use dialogue or thought to convey emotion, but we need to go beyond that as well. And misusing backstory to enhance reader empathy. The section on the common problems to avoid when conveying emotion offers some solid tips and explanations for each of those topics. Now we're back to our first edition so that I can show you a little bit of the inside and what the entries might look like. I'll try to make this visible as much as possible. It's sort of an outline format, and then I'll go over what each of the entries includes. They each have several sections First, you'll find a definition of the emotion and sometimes an explanatory note. I know that happens at least once in the first edition, and I don't recall if any other emotions contain an explanatory note, but you can just look for that. The second section is titled Physical Signals, also known as body language. These are going to be the actions that a character might take when showing emotion, outward actions, not internal things. Next, we have internal sensations, and these would be the inner reactions of the character's body when that character is experiencing the emotion. So this would be your viewpoint character, for example, who's experiencing an emotion, and they can be things like a person's throat tightening or stomach dropping, or even the person could be sweating. Now, sweating can be an outward expression as well, but maybe the character feels flushed, the cheeks heat, a chill runs up or down their spine, that sort of thing. Those are internal sensations an emotion might cause. Then we have mental responses, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then we have cues of acute or long-term presence of the emotion. This will show how a character is affected if he or she has been experiencing this emotion for a significant length of time or is experiencing a severe form of that emotion. Attached to this section, we will find in the first edition a note on what this emotion could escalate to. For example, anger could escalate to rage. But the second edition also includes a section on how this emotion could de-escalate. So that gives us a more complete range of emotions for the character, and we can show the progression or regression of emotions as the character is going through the gamut of feelings in our stories, because we don't just stay in one spot with emotion. So a character who's furious might de-escalate to irritation as his temper wears down a bit, or vice versa. The fury might escalate to rage and the character may take action as a result of that. Next, we have cues of suppressed emotion. Our characters aren't always aware of the emotions they feel, or sometimes they want to hide those emotions from others. And in doing so, this can cause lots of issues for our characters, mentally, even physically, internally. Just like in real life, if we hold our feelings in too much, we can explode suddenly. And so if you can show that effectively in your story, and then if you have a character who's going to have a more volatile reaction later because that person has suppressed the emotion, readers will not be surprised to see it coming, or at least they'll understand why. The second edition also includes a power verbs section so that you can choose stronger words to describe actions and sets of emotion. And each emotion entry ends with a writer's tip section. So all this sounds great, but how do we use the Emotion Thesaurus? The authors advise using this resource in the following ways, and they provide examples for each. First, identify the root emotion, utilize your setting, and remember less is more. Then they advise doing something they call twisting the cliche. And they want us to use the entries in this resource as what they call a launching point. They suggest trying related emotions. So if you have an emotion like anger, try something related to anger to complement it, and use visceral reactions as physical indicators. So they do include both internal and external reactions to emotions, which is great for fulfilling this suggestion that they make. So what are my recommendations for using this guide? Beyond just using this resource to avoid the pitfalls the authors discuss in their opening chapters, I would suggest using this guide when you find yourself getting stuck repeating the same gestures or actions over and over for different emotions or the same emotion. This guide provides lots of examples of physical and internal responses to emotions, so surely you can find something new to use to kind of shake things up a little bit. When you're trying to convey an emotion, I would also suggest using one or more of the items from an entry for that emotion in either action beats or combined with dialogue tags within the character's dialogue, so interspersed with the character's dialogue. If you're not sure what action beats and dialogue tags are, check out this video linked above. I'll also link it in the description. You can also use these entries as actions or interactions with the setting in your descriptive paragraphs that are not attached to dialogue. I would suggest using what they call physical indicators, which is what I call body language. to show the emotions of any character in your story. This can be for your viewpoint character or a non-viewpoint character. The reason these work so well for non-viewpoint characters is because when your scene is told from the point of view of a different character, like let's say the point of view character is observing the other character expressing emotion, your viewpoint character isn't inside that other person's head. So we shouldn't be showing that other character's thoughts or internal responses, but the viewpoint character can see the actions that other character takes, whether they're voluntary or involuntary. And as I mentioned before, if the other character is sweating, your viewpoint character can see that as well. But these outward expressions of emotion are great for non-viewpoint characters because the person whose head we're in for the scene can reasonably observe that. It's a great way to give your reader and that other character a clue as to what the person is feeling. Also, a great way to create conflict is to have your viewpoint character misinterpret those outward indicators of emotion. To show the emotions of a viewpoint character, we can go beyond those physical outward indicators and use the internal physical responses or mental responses as well. Are you finding this helpful so far? If so, consider clicking the like button so YouTube will show this video to more writers just like you. So what do I really think of the Emotion Thesaurus? Well, here's my review. We've already gone over some of the benefits of the Emotion Thesaurus. I think the main one is when you're stuck or when you've been repeating the same gestures and actions over and over, this is a great resource to create some variety in the way we express character emotions. Also, if you're just stumped and you're not sure exactly how to show that emotion, or you might be thinking, well, yeah, the character's not just angry, it needs to be something deeper than that. The entries in the Emotion Thesaurus and the escalate and de-escalate sections in each entry especially really help us to deepen the nuances of the character emotion we can show. So we've seen the benefits, but are there any downfalls to this resource? Well, I touched on this before, but I think the one, downside to this is repetition. We do find often the same physical indicators or internal responses for multiple emotions. But let's be fair to the authors here. The human body is only capable of so many gestures after all, and our culture also determines which gestures we use in relation to different emotions. Just like with greetings. In the US, we might shake hands, or well, we used to shake hands to say hello. Now it's more common to see people do the fist bump thing, especially after COVID. In some countries, people would bow to greet each other. Likewise, we grew up observing specific physical outward responses to emotion, and we imitate that. So if those are different for a different culture, then you will have some more variety. My recommendation to overcome this, well, I wouldn't really call it a flaw in the guide. It's actually just the nature of how we react to things and how our bodies react to things. I would suggest combining gestures from several related emotions or even unrelated emotions if the character is feeling more than one thing at once. And let's be honest, as humans, we often do have a multitude of emotions going on all at the same time. So if you pull several gestures, or if it's a viewpoint character, you might pair a physical outward action with internal responses. They may even contradict each other. Those emotions that the character is allowing herself to express may be far different from the one she's actually feeling. So you can combine these either similar or contrasting emotions and the internal and external indicators for those to deepen the nuance of the emotion you're conveying. This will also help you to create more unique descriptions and vary the gestures and indicators you're using. To keep things fresh, as I mentioned earlier, you can also pair internal responses or outward indicators with emotion-rich dialogue to deepen both the dialogue itself and the physical reactions. So what's my final opinion on the Emotion Thesaurus? Here's a clue. This is the writing craft resource I recommend more than any other to my writer friends, clients, and students. I've been recommending this book for years and will likely continue to do so indefinitely. If you would like to check out the Emotion Thesaurus, I have a link to it in the description. This is an affiliate link, so if you do purchase the book, a tiny portion of the price goes to support my channel at no extra cost to you, so I do appreciate it. Oh, and don't forget to grab your link to my free workshop, 6 Essential Elements of a Powerful Story. Remember, just click the link in the description or visit b2writercoaching.com/workshop. For this week's Power Up, examine a scene or several in your story and determine whether you fall into any of those pitfalls that I mentioned earlier, or whether you are repeating gestures or body language or the same responses over and over. If so, you may want to consider using the Emotion Thesaurus, or at least applying the principles of using body language and internal physical responses to show emotion rather than stating the emotion outright, telling instead of showing, and brainstorm some additional forms of body language and physical responses that you could use in those situations. Pro tip, if you think you might be repeating a gesture too often, you can always go up to the find and replace feature in your word processor. In Microsoft Word, there's a find feature at the top of your window on the right. It's a little box, or you can go under edit and click find and replace, and you could type in that gesture and let Microsoft Word find all the instances of it, and that way you can see how often you're using that gesture and how close together. One powerful way we can convey emotion is by strategically describing what a character experiences through the 5 senses, especially the non-visual senses. In next week's writer coaching session, we'll discuss techniques for using these descriptions to power up your story and the pitfalls to avoid when doing so. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss it. One of the most common causes of telling when we're trying to convey character emotion is the use of filter words. To find out what those are and how to avoid them in your story, check out this video. And let's power up your storytelling.